Nope. And welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to come back. This is our first webinar coming back from the summer. So I hope everyone had a lovely summer, and we're getting back into the groove of things for this fall. We're starting out the fall with a webinar from some lovely guests that have some exciting projects ahead for the year and into the new year, actually. So the title of the webinar is Co-Create with Sync. It is about the 2025-2026 Global Digital Wellbeing Survey. I've had the privilege to interact with Mahmoud and Yasmin, both with Sync, and it's been really exciting to learn about how their initiative of really understanding digital well-being is a priority for them. And they have been launching a global survey about digital well-being, touching some 30 some countries in their first year, 50 countries now in this new iteration. And they've brought along their colleagues, Michael and Emily, from PSB Insights to share more about their efforts in the coming year. And today, it's actually very exciting because they're at the beginnings of their effort for this new global survey. And the reason why they wanted to have this webinar was actually really to co-create with all of you here. And they want to really understand your expertise from the countries that you're from, what you've been learning in your countries about digital well-being, and just about technology and insights from the public that you currently serve. And so this is really more of a learning type webinar than anything else, for the presenters to learn from you, and for an exchange to happen today. Like many other webinars, I'm going to turn it over to our lovely presenters, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. And so I'm very excited to hear from them. They've got some really lovely, I saw the presentation just now. They're very beautiful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yasmin and Mahmoud and Michael and Emily, so to really share with us what exciting project they have ahead. So please take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alice. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. We're very, very pleased, honestly, to be here with you today, and we're very grateful for the opportunity, and we'd love to hear from you all. We can start, actually, we would like to start with a video introducing Sync and the Global Digital Wellbeing cause. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Just as a test, can everyone see and hear the video?
Looks like we lost the sound.
Oh.
Oh no, we lost the sound.
Improving access to health and education.
You're able to hear it?
We're good. We're good now.
Good.
Redefining the future of work. Reshaping society. Yet the benefits of emerging technologies are all around us. Digital systems and artificial intelligence have been enhancing human capabilities and driving economic progress increasingly, but at what cost? Convenience over privacy, amplification of bias, epidemics of misinformation, cultural homogenization. In a world where digital is displacing the physical, too many are being left behind. The key lies in crafting a balance where digital and physical experiences coexist in harmony. How can we help ensure the digital well-being of those newly connected to the online world? Sync by Ithra embraces the global challenge of digital well-being, encouraging balanced relationships with tech. Our goal? Empower digital thriving for all. Through our Global Digital Wellbeing Index, we measure and explore perceptions of technology's impact across 35 nations. Our extensive survey reveals how digital habits shape lives, and our explorations of gaming and social media highlight the benefits and risks associated with online leisure activities. We bring these insights to life through our summits, where we negotiate the future of responsible tech, while our sync retreats support people to rediscover digital balance in our hyper-connected digital world. Tech is a force for social good, but only when we anchor it in human values. At Sync, we're advocates for technology that understands boundaries, fosters connection, and lifts everyone up. There is no well-being without digital well-being.
I'm sharing the slides now.
Yes, it looks great.
I'll start by introducing Sync, the initiative, who we are, what we do, and our mission and objectives. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues also to go to dive deeper into that. But maybe just quickly as a start, I'll introduce myself and let my colleagues as well. On my background, I have a degree in computer science and data analytics, and I joined the program of Sync since the beginning, which is 2021.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Mamun Rashid. I'm also coming from an computing and analytical background. Just picking up on the video you've seen and from the initial slides, it's basically what we do is a global initiative on digital well-being. But again, as you know, digital well-being is not just a single word anymore. It has lots of bells and whistles, depending on who you are, how do you see it, what language you speak, and a lot of the external things too. But as an organization, we do not say we do everything on our own. We have a lot of international collaborators, a lot of partners, academic institute, then industry also. And if the question is where does our outcome or the report goes, we normally present opportunities like UN General Assembly, World Economic Forum, that kind of event, we present our outcomes. But to make this something more specific to this webinar, we will only talk about our survey. So on the survey side, we did one for 30 countries first time, then next year we did 35 countries. This we are heading for 35 country and 50 country, and we think this is a global opportunity, and this is where we are bringing you all together to do it together also.
Okay, thank you so much for giving like a very wonderful summary of what we will be going through today. So maybe just to start off, giving you a story of who we are, where are we based, and what is really our mission. So sync, the word comes from synchronization, so synchronizing your online and offline life. And we are actually based in Saudi Arabia under the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture, which is called Ithra. Ithra is an Arabic word for enrichment. Although we are based here in Saudi, however, the initiative of Sync is very ambitious, I must say, and it's a global initiative. Just because of the nature of that concern. So even when we say digital well-being, when we first started, it was such a huge and a broad word, maybe until now, but we are actually doing our best to try to define it in the best way possible and to ensure being a hub that connects all the people that are working on a similar cause. In terms of like our dedication, mostly in a global perspective, we are dedicated to advancing digital well-being, and we do different kind of things. I would say maybe a lot actually of things, but as Dr. Ma'moon mentioned, we don't do it alone. We collaborate a lot with different entities. So that's why we're actually excited to have this talk together with you. Most of our work, we actually base it on research. So we conduct, starting from the data set of the digital well-being from the survey, we publish several, we already published actually several papers in academic journals about it, specifically on the topics of social media and gaming. But the data set is really huge, and we are always open for collaborators who are interested. In terms of our mission, we really aim to shape a humane and people-centered digital future by bridging, as we mentioned, research, culture, and technology. Generally, in terms of our objectives, I'd like to highlight the key enablers that drive SYNC forward. First, our global summit. It's a biannual convening, and we bring in it a combination of thought leaders, academics, innovators that are all concerned about the same topic, but tackling it from different perspectives. We did 2 iterations of the summit so far, and we had a huge interest in it, and we received a very good feedback in terms of bringing the people together and discussing what's really at stake currently in the landscape of digital well-being, especially like hearing from different perspectives, from tech companies to all the way to policymakers to academia. Another thing that we also do is, or we launched the Global Digital Wellbeing Index. This is more of our benchmarking tool that helps policymakers and international organizations to measure and act on digital well-being. We actually started with looking at 35 countries, and now we are looking to the next iteration of considering more countries, up to 50, especially that when we published this work in several venues, for example, in a lot of the UN related events. Last time we mentioned, we presented in the Internet Governance Forum led by the ITU and also the GSR Global Symposium for Regulators. We receive a lot of feedback and interest from different countries to be included as well in the work. And then thirdly, the global survey, which is the world's largest annual study on digital well-being. This is actually the work that we will dive deeper into, and we will also give the floor to our colleagues, Michael and Emily, to present more on the methodology and the work. Last thing maybe is that's worth mentioning is we are currently working on a big collaboration, I mean a long-term collaboration, 4 years, with the World Health Organization, trying to amplify the concept of digital well-being, or setting it more as a public health priority, especially with, you know, the digital pandemic and a lot of research that we found lately on the impact of social media on children's mental health and loneliness. We also have a global presence in different places. This is part of our advocacy work. We've participated in more than 15 cities. And maybe like at the end of the webinar, we would be glad to mention that our upcoming Digital Wellbeing Summit is happening in 1 week in New York during the UN General Assembly. Okay, next slide. I'll hand it over to my colleague Ma'moon to mention or to talk about what we offer the research community.
Thank you, Yasmin. So I want to pick up on a few things on this particular topic, actually. So as I mentioned before, we initially thought this is a very much qualitative problem, and we could kind of discuss and have a lot of workshops, and we could really come up with a summary and solutions. But then once we deep dive a bit more, then we realize people need evidence. To bring that evidence, you need to get some numbers. And when you want to get some numbers, they don't really want to see our number or my number. They want to see the aggregated number from or different perspective of the number at the global scale. This is where we feel, okay, we need to expand our research, we need to connect the communities, and we need to bring the right people in the room or in the conversation. Without that, I think we sometimes felt our opinion has a bias because of our expertise are limited, because of our scopes are limited. This is where we thought maybe rather than trying to do everything on our own, we expand the community. We communicated with a lot of the UN entities like UNDP, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Bank. We have some links there too, and especially now well-being is much of a mental and physical relationship is there. So we took that very seriously. That is why Yasmin just mentioned that we just signed a 4 years contract with the WHO, and we want to understand it together. And also, like I said, when we look into the world's perspective of the digital well-being, we are very selective about the region, country, and the population we select. I think Michael and Emily will go bit more details on the sampling and how do we do that. But to sum up, the purpose of this is actually bringing you into this closed circle and opening the door for contribution, collaboration, and whatnot we could do as a collective force or a community. And this is an invitation from us. And this is where we said community is a big thing, and that is how we actually work. So in numbers, as you can see, we do a lot of projects, but some of the landmark research work we did, obviously, in 2023, we did that largest global survey, as Yasmin mentioned before. We surveyed 35 countries, taking 35,000 samples, and that's actually 1,000 samples from each country. But then with that, we actually formed Global Digital Wellbeing Index. You might think, so that is that index end product of our survey or the data? That's not actually true, because out of our 126 questions, we only took 26 questions into our survey, and rest of the 94 parameters actually came from the other sources. For example, World Happiness Index, WHO data from ITU, because the ITU data is very much onto the people's perception, connectivity, and access to the network, access to the services, that kind of data. So 94 different parameters we also used from the secondary data sources. We also run a first global Gen Alpha Council, where 250 participants from different country, different the family member, and also children who are involved too. That actually goes beyond our 35 country, and we covered 42 country on that one. And on the sorry, I think Yasmin has something.
Can I just add a little bit more on the first Global Gen Alpha Council? Because it's such a unique project, and it came naturally after we conducted the first summit, because the last project, actually, the intervention and policy strategy that we are working on with Johns Hopkins, is targeting people that are in high school. However, we're receiving a lot of questions in terms of what kind of research that there exists in terms of like the effect of technology on the younger generation. And Gen Alpha, as you know, they're the kids that are born after 2010 or 2012 up to 2025. So we actually realized that there isn't a lot of work that's talking or looking into the effect of tech on that sample of people. So together globally, we established a council that looks into, or that compromises of parents and educators that are dealing with Gen Alpha, just to look into or to understand more what are their concerns and how are they dealing with tech differently, because with the uniqueness of the circumstances that they grew up in, there are different factors to take into account when we are talking about digital well-being in that case. Sorry.
And just also add on that, we just publish our, we will publish the global journal reports and findings in UNGF in next month, but we already published one local version. I mean, when I say local version, I mean the Saudi perspective. And we believe this is actually an open door and opportunity for you too to look into those and maybe participate in your country or do something together in future too. We already touched on the John Hopkins. They are also one of our long-term partner, but it doesn't mean the opportunity we have or the collaboration interest we have that is limited to only high-end or top university. We are really open to connect with the countries that we are not connected or position the intervention or the studies where we have not done anything yet. So next slide, please.
Okay. Now we are actually handing over to our colleagues, Michael and Emily.
We find the unmute button first. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you, Mamoon and Yasmin, for the introduction, and Alice as well. So just going to take you through a little bit around the survey itself. So the topic of this kind of session today was around co-creation. So I think just worth reiterating in that respect, we'll take you through a little bit of the genesis of the study and how we've got here and what we're doing right now, because a lot of this is a very timely discussion around the third wave of the study that's about to take place in the next few months. One thing we're really looking for from this is just the opportunity to be able to talk to a wider group of people and talk about what we're doing, both in terms of the areas of focus for the study, from 2021. I mean, it's very, very surprising in some respects as well, because it's not the topic that it was 5 years ago. That was the middle of the pandemic, we all think with what it was like to get home and video conferencing and tech and all those things have started to change our lives. All of the changes and actually the debate that we're having more generally has changed too. With that, I'll really certainly look for that. And a core thing that we're looking to get from today's study is just hear from you in terms of what you think the areas of focus that we should be focusing on, as well as things like new countries as we do the expand survey into a even more global, if that's possible, more generally. I had the privilege of being brought on by the team back in 2021 to write very disaster. At the time, I was based in the Middle East and ran a survey called the Arab Youth Study, which, if anyone who's kind of looked for data in the Middle East and looked at the attitudes of youth might have come across. The SYNC team came to me. Dr. Had Al-Bia, he's the head of the SYNC team now. And it came to me and said, we're looking to a similar study, but instead of looking at youth, we want to look at digital wellbeing globally. And in many respects, a great topic, because actually it's one of those global issues that affects pretty much everyone in different ways, absolutely. But that process change that we're going through is very much a trend and affect the world. So we looked at this global study. The biggest challenge tends to be the fact that, well, no, and I think it's been touched on by Yasmin. I mean, there was no real clear definition of what digital wellbeing might be. We went and did a separate study at the time that looked at kind of how to define it. And there was both people coming back and saying, well, it's a positive thing. It's about the impact that digital tech is having on well-being. There were those who were saying it's almost exclusively negative. And I think that's where a lot of the debate now sits, is around that negativity. And there were those who were looking at a more complex picture. And I think the understanding we now have of this as a subject is very different from the one that we had a few years ago. And even just moving past the notion of digital and well-being being two separate concepts, but instead seeing them as one kind of big one, is a relatively new idea unto itself too. So kind of a really interesting journey. We started off back in 2021 with 30 countries as part of our study. That expands out to 35 in 2023, and it's going to go up to 50 countries with the study that we're looking to kind of commission in the next few months. I mean, one of the great trends that's occurred at that time is the fact that AI didn't get mentioned in the post-2021 study. I think, again, like, it's amazing how much that's now preoccupied a big part of our understanding of tech. But actually, I didn't ask anything about it. In 2023, we asked a couple of questions about it, and obviously now it's going to be quite a substantial part of any study that we might do. I see my colleagues have come off mute. Would you like to say something?
Yes, Michael, sorry to interrupt, but your voice is...
Is that the same for everyone? Yes, I'm seeing nods. Okay, I tell you what, if you just give me 1 second, I'm going to get a microphone. Emily, so I'm just doing a favor of running through some of the countries and questionnaires that we were looking at while you can just give me 1 second.
Yes, if I can get myself off mute and don't have the same issues that Michael has, I'm more than happy to talk through some of the countries that we've included in the research in the past. So one of the things that we have really prioritized through doing this research is that we want to have a truly global view of digital well-being and our understanding. So within our 30 countries and 35 countries that we included in 2023, one of the things that we made sure to prioritize was having a truly global and representative view of the research. So we've included countries based on the World Bank perceptions of regions, and that's how we used our framework to help set up which countries we selected, as well as choosing those that represent larger populations and a diverse picture of income throughout the regions. So whilst we might expect that we have included some of the larger countries, including India, Brazil, China, the US, we've also made sure to include a diverse picture across different regions, thinking of countries such as Mexico, Indonesia, and Ghana, which are part of our study and we have included. So when we moved into 2023, we really wanted to continue building on with our additional 5 countries, but also changing the picture to make sure that it created a representative view. So we included countries such as Vietnam, Malaysia, Estonia, and Chile to really give an expanded view of the countries that we were including within the research. Michael, I see you're back. Are you a little less crackly at this point? And I'll hand back to you to continue talking through the 2023 research.
Any better?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's nods mostly. Okay, great. So, brilliant. I won't stop you, Emily. Finish your bit, and then I'll come back to the bit that I was going to go on. So crack on with your bit, and I'll come back to mine.
Yeah, of course. So with our continuation and moving forward to include 50 countries, we really wanted to evaluate where our countries sat. And therefore, one of the things that we did was we looked at how they were mapping out on both population, but also on income. And we saw that whilst we had a good split across the global regions, our survey sample aligned relatively closely to global proportions. Obviously, we saw that countries and regions where they have large countries such as China and India, we did look to under-index slightly, and Europe. With smaller countries, we over-indexed, but actually we had a fairly representative split. However, when we looked at income, we realized that we were very much skewing towards higher income countries, which in part was our selection process initially, as we wanted to view those who were digitally connected and therefore more likely to be engaged with digital well-being. However, we acknowledge that understanding the impact of digital disconnectedness is something that we really want to be able to do moving forward, and it's affected and changed our approach as we want to move towards including lower income countries, such as on our target list include Ethiopia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, to really approach this. However, it does mean that we may have to move away from our mostly online approach and may need to switch towards a CATI or phone to web approach with our methodologies.
Brilliant. Back to me?
Yeah.
Lovely. Super. Thank you. And yes, I hope that is clearer, but please wave at me if it's not the case. And we'll try and find a different space in the office that's got slightly better Wi-Fi. So the kind of couple of points I just wanted to add on top of all of that was just around how the survey has evolved over its different era and some of the challenges that we've looked to face or we've faced as we've gone through the different elements of the survey. So I think one of the biggest challenges we generally faced is around trying to get a set of questions that is equally applicable to so many different audiences, countries, backgrounds, cultures, languages, and ensure that we're asking questions that are actually reasonably comparable across all these different situations. As I mentioned, like digital wellbeing is something that we're very conscious is a properly global phenomenon that's impacted people in various different ways. But actually, as I think was touched on in the video earlier that the Sync guys showed, it's one of those things where for a lot of people, their digital disconnectedness is still a massive issue in large parts of the world. That's especially true in places where governments, for example, are moving large amounts of services to online, impacting some groups much more than others. So one thing we were really looking to do was try and understand how best to go about doing that. It's kind of faced a bit of a challenge into itself, because one thing we've looked to try and do as we've gone through the years is to include more kind of academically validated measures. I think Emily touched on this, and the Sync guys as well, include more academically validated measures as we've gone through to try and give a global understanding or a global, quite rich data set to include those. But obviously they come with the challenge of often being written in quite specific cultural contexts. So even though they may be tested more generally, actually the applicability of a lot of those to different places does tend to vary. So what we've often looked to do is to try and take different forms of kind of validated scale. And I've got my Sync colleague, Professor Justin Thomas, on the line as well, who I know can speak to a lot of this much better than I can, and try and find a way to adapt those into a way that actually that being highly applicable and highly relevant to a lot of people in a lot of different places. I know we feel like we've learned a lot in the process of doing that. A lot of the fiddling that we used to do to a lot of those metrics has stopped, and we just started to accept the fact that they do have limitations and being okay with that. But that's certainly one of the kind of broader trends that we face more generally, is just how do we go about writing a set of questions that actually is fair, applicably, contextually relevant to so many different places too. It's also about trying to ensure that we're getting the right kind of sample sizes and the right kind of people in the right kind of place to call this a global survey. I mean, it's one of the easiest critiques in the world that a global survey is not very global if you're only giving India and China a 10th or a 15th of your sample, when we all know that they encompass almost a quarter of the world's population. And in many respects, that is a fundamental challenge that we've looked to face. Also ensuring that we don't just pick large countries. And I think Emily will have surmised some of this in kind of her summary, but it's so easy to go about picking developed large countries, which we know are kind of quite commonly picked up on, but actually in many respects, it's the smaller, more interesting ones, and I know the team do dwell on this quite a lot, that have often quite specific like policy priorities. So looking to try and understand the impact of different policy impacts on different countries that are often very interesting too, but obviously not very relevant in a global context in quite the same way. So we look to really balance that out in the different ways that we choose our countries, and increasingly using kind of new methods in order to access interviews in those places and understand more generally what they do. I think a third challenge is just trying to pick in this topic that's moving so quickly, is just about trying to pick a set of questions and a set of topics that are actually relevant 2 years down the line. And that may seem a silly thing to say, but we included, and this was a Professor Justin thing, we included a question on banning smartphones in schools as almost an afterthought, I think, for the 2023 survey. I think it was the last question that got added. Because at the time it wasn't a discussed thing. So it was something we thought, as obviously to some extent was becoming more of an issue. But at that point, no one had really done it. And it wasn't something that was being widely discussed. But actually looking back at it now, looking at that data, of the top, I think 4 countries in that, and I'm actually looking down somewhere, of the top 4 countries that we saw in our study of 35 countries, which were most pro banning smartphones in schools, the top 4 were France, which has gone ahead and done it, was top. Bangladesh was second, which hasn't. It's got some limitations related to COVID, but hasn't implemented any more since. Italy was third and has gone ahead and banned it. And Australia was fourth, which has gone and implemented one of the most extreme kind of social media policies when it comes to child usage. So it is quite exciting to be able to look back and, I mean, firstly, just working out what we should ask is a real challenge. But secondly, just seeing actually that some of that data being quite predictive to some of the real world manifestations that then came about in the year or 18 months afterwards. I mentioned about AI. We asked an AI or a couple of AI questions in 2023. But the two examples we gave for an AI bot at the time, or chatbot, one was ChatGPT, which we all know. The other was Google Bard. And I don't know if anyone can remember Google Bard, but it was Google's first attempt at a chatbot. And it's now obviously been surpassed by many different ones. But again, just speaks to the fact that this stuff changes so quickly. And that was only a questionnaire from 2 years ago. So it just shows you how much this issue more generally is changing. So you see a lot of trade-offs that have to be made, a fair amount of inequality in the way we go about doing our method and the way we're thinking about it, but trying to be conscious of that as best we can and get those trade-offs to the right kind of extent. We are, I think, looking as part of this, looking at different forms of research that can compensate for the bits that we know this doesn't touch on. We call it a global survey, but in reality, it's a globally connected survey. It's a global online population survey, which is not so different in developed countries, but is very different in the developing world countries. So we are looking for new and different ways in order to access those people. And then also just think about, as we said, like the way we go about selecting these additional countries as we go about it, and ensuring that these are the most kind of effective and influential ways to go about doing it. I'm just going to pause there because I know it was quite a lot of information and quite a lot of kind of talking as such. I don't know if any of the sync colleagues or Emily have anything they'd like to add before we can make, yes, Professor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Michael. Apologies, and thank you for creating this space for the discussion. And we do sincerely hope that we will leave space and time, and we hope that we can continue a conversation on later with regards to the co-creation piece. But just to pick up on a few of the things that Michael said about the content of the survey, one reflection that pops to my mind is I remember we presented some of the data from the 2023 survey. So this not that long ago. And we were kind of talking about a few of the AI questions. And one of the things we said as a joke to the audience at the time, for example, is a future question might be, would you be happy with your child having an AI girlfriend? And oh, how we laughed. The room laughed like that's a silly thing. That's never going to happen. And like literally a year later, we certainly are contemplating questions about the use of companion chatbots with children. So just to kind of illustrate the kind of pace at which technology moves, and so there's a challenge to kind of try and future-proof the content of the survey. I think the other reflection I had about the survey, because this is a tension for us with the survey, is it's dual, we coined the phrase dual duty, which is this idea that we're trying to achieve essentially, I mean, there's probably more than two things, but two major things we're trying to achieve with this work in terms of the findings. One of them is essentially to fuel public discussion. And so for that, we ideally need what we call provocative sound bites. So 80% of families, say XYZ, and we know the robustness of that in terms of decision making. So it's not kind of decision grade evidence, but it's conversation stimulating evidence. So there's a conscious engineering of content that will give us those, if you like, juicy sound bites that will travel and will stimulate further discussion and soul searching amongst the general public as part of a if you like, a stated aim to increase and enhance awareness and reflection on the topic. But then the other, and this is the other duty of the survey, really is to collect data using these well-validated, existing, psychometrically validated measures that have reliability, internal validity to at least to some extent. And to share a few examples of the scales that we've embedded in the earlier iterations of the survey. One of them is the UCLA loneliness scale, so the 3-item version of the loneliness scale, the World Health Organization's PHQ-2, which is a very brief attempt at measuring depression, the World Health Organization's general anxiety disorder scale, 7-item scale, and then there's an internet gaming disorder scale based on the American Psychiatric Association's research criteria for that particular problem, and so on and so forth. So within the Global Digital Wellbeing Survey are these already surveys that have been kind of tried and tested, kind of validated on various populations. And we, again, that's the data that we focus on, particularly for answering research questions. And I think Michael's point is a great one about the idea of cultural invariance. So there's undoubtedly, you know, the idea that these measures can measure the same thing across all cultures is hugely debatable. And we do the usual standard translation, back translation of the measures to try and, you know, at least we're using very short measures, translation, back translation. So there's some efforts to minimize cultural variation in terms of the way these things are answered. But I think the last thing I'll say, and I think this is quite useful, is that we don't, I think often when you do a global study like this, it's implicit that you're going to make comparisons between countries and groups. And to be honest, I found that the most useful thing to do isn't that. You know, looking within countries and looking at correlations between things is arguably more useful. Also looking for commonalities. So some of the things we've done across all cultures, across all of the samples and all of the different nations, like within, for example, the gaming disorder scale, there's one item across all of the different countries that gets the highest endorsement. So for me, that's really interesting. So looking at some of the similarities rather than kind of, you know, France is higher than Germany in this. So there are a few reflections that your words stimulated, Michael. I hope that's of some value and shed some more light on the work that we've done. But thank you. Handing back over to my colleagues at PSB or back at Basecamp Sync. You're on mute, Michael. You're on mute.
The tech problems continue. There we go. I think we're going to pause here and see if there's any questions or observations that were from the group. I don't know if any of the WAPOR moderators, is there a preferred way to do this? Is it normally through the question answer chat, or is it something else?
Either way, actually, Michael. Yes, people are welcome to unmute their microphones or type it in the chat too.
Thank you, Alice.
There's a question in the Q&A, and it's from Antonia. How do you select respondents? What is the survey's mode?
Brilliant. I can answer that, and I'm sure Emily will correct me when I inevitably get something wrong. But we conduct the survey through kind of standard online panels in almost every location. So these are people who have signed up to kind of quite regular consumer online panels, and then obviously select them based on various different kind of demographic and socioeconomic profiles for each of the countries. I mean, again, and this, I'm sure those who do a lot of international research here will kind of be familiar with that. Getting a good socioeconomic factor, whether that be educational or household income or something, to act as a way to try and stratify our sample is always a challenge, but we do our very best in each of the countries we do the research in. I say that with a slight caveat, which is this year, because we are looking to do some slightly smaller nations with quite specific circumstances, we are looking increasingly to doing a telephone to web recruit, so keeping the method of completing the survey the same in terms of it being online, but we're doing recruitment slightly differently, so they won't have pre-opted into an online panel, instead be called by recruiters as a way of being able to get a good set of interviews in smaller countries where obviously those online kind of big economic consumer panels don't really exist. So online is our core method. All the surveys completed online, but the recruitment is now going to be for this year split between telephone to web and consumer panels.
We don't see the questions. We don't see the questions. Hi, Alice. I don't think we see the questions. If there are any questions on the chat.
Yeah, I don't, there aren't, I know this is always the awkward phase of some folks may be thinking of questions, may not have questions, you know, we've all been there. So if there's any other, you know, requests or details from any of the presenters here today, I mean, feel free to add, you know, any countries that you're hoping to learn from, just curiosities that you've had. I think this is a good place to share. And the recording of this will also be sent out to the WAPOR membership as well, and to make them aware of this. So feel free to, you know, specify if there's something that's interesting that you would want to know from particular parts of the world too.
I could just say one more thing, just to chip in if there are no more questions before we wrap up. Is just that the data sets are from 2021 and the data sets from 2023 are available. We're more than happy to share the data, especially if there's a specific research question. So we'd be more than happy for people to contact us via email if there's some interest in working together on additional analysis of the two existing data sets. And then obviously we have this year's data that will be collected any minute now. We hope any time fairly soon it's going to happen.
Actually, Justin, you gave the answer before the question. I can see the same question someone asked, I think Emmanuel. So just to add what Justin mentioned, yes, data is available. You can have access to the data. But I think we, at the same time, we actually put a process to get our data. So what we normally do, if you are interested in our data or in our findings, you will request that to us. We'll send you the questionnaire. And then from the questionnaire, you could say, if you give me access to X, Y, and Z answers, then I can construct some sort of research or publications. And then we can share those data rather than sending you the whole data without not knowing much. So it's more of a collaborative data sharing. So if you are interested, you are more than welcome to write to us, and we will give you the data you need, and with some research interest. Thank you.
And then if I may just add a couple of last points. So I would just echo that first and foremost. So these guys are absolutely amazing when it comes to sharing data. I'm sure it's been said many times before that people are open to sharing data that they collect. But I would just say the Sync team are fantastic for it, and very open to collaborations with the data being collected. As much as obviously this survey is my pride and joy, I would say the other work they do as well is fantastic. So there was mention of kind of the Gen Alpha study, like that kind of longitudinal study of how different youth are adapting to different to technology and going through their kind of teen years, and how they're feeling about it is absolutely fantastic. So again, not just this, but for the other work that they are doing, if you do have any interest, I would strongly recommend you reach out to any of the guys, or obviously ourselves. We're happy to put you in contact, because they can help you, direct you in the right direction with that. Kind of second to it as well is just, and I kind of touched on it, was this notion of they're also increasingly looking to do research in other areas too. So this is a much bigger program than one particular piece of research. It's all those kind of activations that was talked about in the video and Yasmin shared, as well as being like new areas of research that looks to cover this off. So as I mentioned, the notion of digital wellbeing has expanded rapidly from basically smartphones, social media, and health to something that is so broad now that I know a lot of their research is looking to adapt to or take into account different parts of that as well. So I would just say that they are kind of very open to ideas, or we're all very open to ideas that crop up in terms of new areas to potentially expand in that. for each, I'm very excited for getting this third wave done, partly because it will mean that we have some proper trend data, and I won't just be looking at one data point and saying that's the change. So hopefully we'll see some clear trends. I think all those different subjects or subject areas, topic areas that Emily mentioned earlier, we do have 1 or 2 questions for almost all of them that are tracked now. So whether that be purely around whether something's seen as good or bad for society more generally, or something slightly more nuanced, we do generally have a question for almost all those areas, which I think is pretty unique. I'm always scared that someone's going to call me out on that at some point. But having it for this many countries now across what will effectively be 5 years of data, I think is a really exciting part of it more generally. And then I was just going to end on like a slightly positive note. So I'm always wary about making generalized insights, but I may just do it very quickly if give me a bit of time. And one of the things that was like very clear from the 2021 research when we did it initially was this notion of the fact that it felt like people were very out of balance with their use of tech. Like a lot changed very quickly, and it wasn't just obviously tech that did that, but a lot of people's use of tech changed very quickly, and that was quite concerning more broadly in terms of the side effects and impacts that was having in people's lives. What was really exciting with 2023, or one of the things that was quite exciting about 2023, was where people were becoming more conscious of the negative impacts of tech, they were also seemingly taking action to try and limit it. So it seemed to be that there was quite a strong, like, and I you know, across this many interviews in this many countries, it's quite exciting to see a kind of broad global impact, whereby if people do start to think that they are using too much tech, or it's having too great a part in their lives, or they're seeing smartphones as, for example, describing them as addictive, that's actually then leading to the fact that they are trying to implement new ways to limit their own usage, and they are feeling better about their use. So there was both an increase in the amount of people who are aware of the negative side effects of tech, but there was also a greater number of people who were saying that actually their tech was more imbalanced in 2023. And I think that again speaks to the greater awareness around that negativity and the ability to try and mitigate some of the broader impacts of tech in their lives, and both a positive and negative way. And just really excited to see how that's continued this year as well, because I think that's again one of those things where I would love to see if that is a trend, and actually we talk about this more. But actually, I would posit that the worst bit was 2021. It was that moment of COVID when we were all adapting really quickly, and the discussion we're now having more globally around how to use tech in a healthy and balanced manner is actually a function of the fact that we are trying to find a way to do it, to live a more healthy life when it comes to tech. So it's a more positive element to end on, but I would just say that I'm really excited to see whether that bears out. And actually in essence, what we see is as we become more aware of both the positives and negatives of tech, they are able to find better balance in their usage, and hopefully a more overall healthy digital wellbeing life. I will end on that unless there are any final questions or comments.
May I just add a point from our side? First of all, just echoing what's being said already, and re-emphasizing on the call to action here, which is that we cannot do this alone, honestly. So we're very happy and glad to see that there is interest in collaborative work. Absolutely, the access to the previous data sets for the 2 iterations we've done is available. But even when we saw interest from different entities and academic institutions, something different that we are doing this year in the 3rd iteration or the 3rd wave of the survey is that some of the questions that we are incorporating in this survey, we opened like a call to different entities and different organizations if they have an interest in a specific area to be included in the survey. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention here or reiterate on is, as Michael mentioned before, we are calling this a global survey. However, it's mostly for or getting answers from the people that are connected online. But as you know, like there is about 2.7 billion, or a third of the world population, that live in an unconnected regions, or maybe they do have a connection, but the bandwidth is not really that good. So one of the things that we are aiming to do as well is to expand that research reach to the unconnected region. So we would love also to hear from you if you have an experience in that, because the way we conduct the survey and the research there will absolutely take into account how the circumstances are different there, and even like the question of digital well-being in such areas will be, or at least we are very proud to say that one of the things that we really pay attention to that came up a lot in all of the workshops that we do is the consideration of the cultural differences when you're doing that sort of work. Because when we talk about digital well-being, there is no one digital well-being that fits all. It differs from one culture to another, and even like when we talk about some of the policies when dealing with tech devices, maybe some of them would work in a certain country, but when you're talking about like a different part of the world, you'll need to take into consideration the different cultural aspects. Yeah.
And just to add one item from my side, as many of you are actually coming from this industry and have years of experience on this, we build this, we design this survey, we run this survey, we construct the index, but at the same time, we know it's hard to say any survey is perfect. There is always, the pros and cons, and if there are any ways, anything you think of we should be covering or we did not cover or we could include from the perspective of your region or your expertise, we are more than welcome you to raise those voices, and we're more than happy to bring those into considerations too. And also, last point, obviously, we are very close to launch our 2025 survey, but this is still an open invitation to, we're gathering a kind of a survey questionnaire kind of repository. So if there are any burning questions you don't have a mechanism to reach out to those 50 countries, that amount of samples, we could be your way to do it. And finally also, whatever we do, we do without any expectations because we solely invest on our entire survey. So if there are anything you can contribute or you want take advantage of our survey, I think this is an open invitation for any individual or any organization. Thank you.
There's a question that came in the Q&A. C's asks, will you be sharing any example results and outputs?
Sorry, I'm just, my colleagues may add more. All the findings or all the analysis we did is on, most of them are on our website and went to publications. So you can look into our, maybe if you're interested, you can share the questionnaire. If you have a specific findings, you can look into our survey report and also in our index report. If there anything else specific you want to know, you can also reach out to us. And we're also more than happy to share all the publications. They are all publicly available.
If there's time, I can just to give a couple of examples of findings to answer the question. I think the two that burn in my, and Dr. Mamoun, thank you for that. There are several publications, reports, peer review publications available via the Sync website. But a couple, just to, I guess, to speak to the utility of the effort. Yeah, so that in terms of answering questions, so there's one analysis, I think I briefly mentioned that. So if you look at the concept or the construct of gaming disorder, which is a contested construct, one of the things that our survey data showed is that across, without any variance at all across all of the 35 countries, there's one particular item that everybody endorses as a particularly high score. It's a symptom, and the symptom is the symptom of escapism. But in terms of the way gaming disorder is conceptualized currently, that presents a challenge. So I think it can, I mean, good research answers questions, and it also throws up new questions, and so it threw up that particular question. Another quick example is when we looked at attitudes towards AI optimism, pessimism, you see a real huge difference between the Anglosphere, so the English-speaking nations like the US, the UK, Australia, and East Asian and Southeast Asian nations. So you find really high levels of optimism, and then really high levels of pessimism. So again, these throw up, questions. Good research throws up new questions as to look for answers as to why those differences might exist. I'm going to zip it because there's so many more we could look at. There's tons of really interesting, and it's cross-sectional. We know that it's limitations, it's cross-sectional, but it helps us identify new research avenues, and it certainly does move the needle forward in many different avenues of the general research agenda that's interested in how technology impacts our mental, physical, social health in various ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I don't think I see any more questions coming in, but next time I'm going to advertise. I didn't know that our presenters here were so keen on sharing data. I should have advertised it as free data. In the
Data buffet.
exactly in the webinar advertising. In any case, thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. I'm so grateful for all of your time and being willing to be so open and transparent about the project you're doing, the methodology, and all of the data sharing. I think many of us here are always keen to learn and to collaborate. So please, I'm sure you'll expect lots of interest coming in from others that are going to watch this recording too. Thank you again for being here. And Senya, thank you for organizing for us. And to all the participants here that have not registered to be WAPOR members, please do so. And we will see you again soon at our next webinar next month. Thank you so much for joining us today.